My entire adult life, I've only had two goals. Seek vengeance on all the elementary school teachers that were complicit in me being eliminated from the 8th grade spelling bee, even though I spelled the word correctly, and I actually have visual evidence of this. And also to trick everybody into learning major 7 chords on the internet. So this is kind of what this is today. It's like, yeah, okay, Sean, teach us some more major 7 chords, but this actually isn't just a trick. It's actually something that'll really help your guitar playing out. All right, so we're gonna do this in the key of C. And all it is a simple move, all right? So you really have to learn one chord, and you're gonna learn an entire chord scale, and your guitar playing is never gonna be the same after doing this trick, all right? So this is a C major 7 chord. This entire lesson, we're gonna pretend like we don't even have any E strings. The low E string and the high E string are just gonna be eliminated. Just like I've eliminated the social studies teacher and the math teacher already, and my list still has a few names on it. Just kidding, I'm not killing teachers, but I am still kind of salty about that spelling bee thing. So we're only using the middle 4 strings here, all right? I've got the 3rd fret on the A string, this is my C, the 5th fret on the D string, ring finger, 4th fret on the G string, middle finger, and then 5th fret on the B string, pinky, okay? Now, this power chord here, your pointer finger and your ring finger, this is gonna be the static thing that's never gonna change, all right? Now, the trick here is to take your middle finger and your pinky and swap them on different strings, same fret, okay? So you can think of your middle finger and your pinky having ownership of the fret relative, the 4th fret and the 5th fret relative to where your pointer finger is, and then just swapping, okay? What this does, this turns a major 7 chord into a minor chord, okay? Now, you know, you can use this musically. There's a lot of songs that do this major to minor chord type deal. But what's interesting about this is we can play all the chords in this key, really just using this little trick, all right? So we're gonna run this down the fretboard, and it's gonna sound like this. Okay? And all I did was I just moved it to a different root note, and then did the old swapperooski. The old swapperooski, guys. You know you love that. So let's do the first 4 chords in this key, all right? They end up being C major, D minor, E minor, F major. All right, now what we have to know is where to move these chords to, this shape to. Now you can sign up for my Patreon, and I go through a very, very in-depth explanation of all of this stuff. If you want a complete musical theory, guitar playing background thing, the Patreon is the best way to do it because it's so cheap and everything is in order. The thing about YouTube is you kind of have to come up with some stupid title to kind of trick people into watching stuff. But if you actually want to learn guitar from the ground up, the Patreon's the best way to do it. Link in the description, all right? First thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna follow the dots, right? 3, 5, 7. Just the inlays on your guitar will usually have dots doing the odd frets, right? 3, 5, 7. And then we're gonna do the same thing, which is really 2 frets and 2 frets, right? We have a root note, a whole step, and a whole step. Then we're gonna go a half step and do the same thing. Okay, so a note, 2 frets higher, go a half step. We have a note, 2 frets higher, 2 frets higher, okay? And then now when we put the chord on it, we have all the chords in the key of C, all right? And this actually works in any key, it just depends on where you start, all right? We'll do another key at the end of this, but I wanna talk about the one chord that we've missed so far, and that's this chord right here. There's 7 notes in a scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can play them along one string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And then we can attach a chord to any one of these single notes, all right? Again, more about this on the Patreon if you're fancy. But this shape only ever changes for this chord, the 7 chord, which we could play it here, or we could play it here. And it's a fancy one, right? The name of this is B minor 7 flat 5. We can just take this original C major 7 shape, move it back 1 fret, and then take your other fingers besides your pointer finger and move that back another fret. So I've got 2, 3, 2, 3. So it's essentially the same shape, but just kind of squished a little bit, right? So again, let's do the 3 main shapes that we have now. It's the major one, the minor one, the major one, the fancy minor 7 flat 5 half diminished one, okay? So I think taking them off of one root note is a great way to just kind of see these shapes in action. Now, how this is gonna help you is, there's a million different ways this is gonna help you out. First of all, being able to number these chords, think of these chords as numbers in a scale, is the easiest way to learn songs, all right? Like if you're gonna do a 1, 4, 2, 3 chord progression, you'd be like, all right, 1, 4, 2, 3. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 4, 2, 3 would be the song, right? And you can see how easy that is, just moving across and then just making a small adjustment. It doesn't even look like my actual hand is doing anything different. I'm just moving it left and right. But when I get to that minor chord, I just make that little swap. I can even do it from major to minor on that 4 chord a lot. That's a pro tip move. Minor 4 chord is something that always sounds pretty good. And it's all just moving around like that. Now I want to talk a little bit about the next major chord here, which is right here on the 5 chord. All right, remember we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor are how the shapes line up with this, okay? So the 1, 4, and 5 chords are major, the 2, 3, and 6 chords are minor, and that 7 chord is the weird one. Now the thing about the 5 chord is generally it's not a major 7 chord. I always try to turn it into a major 7 chord because I'm just that kind of guy. But this note isn't really in the scale. When we get to here, this is supposed to be a dominant 7 chord, okay? The way to play this as a chord voicing would be using the same kind of shape as a major 7, just taking your middle finger off. And then that's the one chord here that we're using that turns into a bar chord, which is 10, 12, 10, 12. Okay? Now, you know, dominant 7 chords have a complicated history in my mind. I generally don't use dominant 7 chords a whole lot. I just kind of really play just the A, D, and B string for this one, because then we get away with using the entire thing without using any actual bar chords. I think which is a big win for people if, you know, maybe bar chords are kind of tricky to play. But again, that's up to you. The thing just to remember is that the 5 chord in a key does become a dominant 7 chord, and then we can go through the entire chord scale. 1 is major, or major 7. 2 is minor. 3 is minor. 4 is major, or major 7. 5 is major, or dominant 7. 6 is minor. 7 is that weird half one. And then back here. Okay, and then now once you know that, I mean, this is so much of the fretboard. And you can go back and forth. Now, the tricky thing, or actually the kind of low-key sneaky thing about learning these chord voicings is you're actually learning all the notes in the scale, right? Because let's take just like a 3 notes per string major scale deal with C major right here. You know, maybe you've seen stuff like, oh, practice da 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 da. And it's like all these notes are actually in these chords, right? So when you're soloing, I think a big part of soloing isn't so much about getting into a scale shape and doing stuff, it's getting into a chord shape and doing stuff, right? Like maybe I want to do just like a little riff between these chords right here, the 1, 2, and 3 chord. Maybe I can just start to find little pieces of these chords that fit together, right? So let's go to that 2 and 3 chord specifically, all right? Maybe I just think of where my ring finger and my pinky are right here. It's like, oh, the 7th fret on the D and G string and the 9th fret on the D and G string. Maybe I can turn that into a little 4-note mini scale, right? So now if I want to do that musically in context, I can go 1, 2, 3. And see how I'm kind of like, I'm starting to maybe just focus on this. Double stop through it. And then eventually I can just start to incorporate my shapes from my chords and think of them as scale shapes, okay? And all that works just by using that little trick where we're swapping the pinky and the middle finger, just like that. Now, it can be tricky to do this. A lot of times you'll look right at your hand and be like, all right, pinky and middle finger, switch strings. And then you're like, whoops. That happens a lot. But the more you think about it, maybe just start by moving your pinky and then your middle finger, and then eventually you can get them both at the same time. Now, I said this works in any key, right? So let's just do a different key. Let's do the key of D. Let's just find a D on the A string, 5th fret, and then everything still stays the same. We have major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. We have that weird 7th note, and then home, right? So we can still do that same. Or we can even go backwards, like that, and then kind of keep going, keep the dream and the party alive. So remember, the A string is really probably the most helpful string as far as rooting notes, because it just makes things so much easier to do things in this confined 4-string spot. I do think the beauty of guitar is that we have 6 strings to kind of work and manipulate and do a lot of cool stuff with. But once we kind of focus down on just the notes that make up a chord, which I think 4 strings is like a much easier way to process and handle all that than maybe 6 strings is, then I think everything just becomes a lot easier. So thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the Patreon if you're super fancy. And I've got to go because I've got to go check some more names off my list, if you know what I'm saying. And if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, or the website. I'll talk to y'all soon.